Welcome to the Ascent Podcast, a show about inspiring people who explain their path to achievement. I'm your host, Joe Burgess, Wealth Advisor at Moxie Wealth Management. This is our first episode of Season 2. Thanks for continuing to listen. If you're a new subscriber, welcome. I appreciate it. Today on the show, we chat with Scott Jorgensen, an advertising copywriter / creative director at large. His company is called Basecamp Inc., which makes a lot of sense when you hear about how he weaves together his love of travel, mountain climbing, and other passions with his freelance work life. All of this allows for an enviable sense of freedom and enrichment that gives him his version of success. Hey, Scott, thanks for coming in today.
Hey, Joe, good to see you, man.
Why don't we start by tell me about your evolution in your career in advertising to become a freelance copywriter.
Wow, where
to start?
I've always, ever since second grade, loved writing.
Okay.
And I think I wanted to do something around that, just be able to make up things, create things. And when I got to college, it's like, I want to be a writer, but I also want to eat, and I like shelter and things like that.
Right.
And advertising was, I remember looking at an awards book one time, and there were just these funny ads, these ones that were really clever. And I thought, people get paid for this. Mm-hmm. So that got me interested in it and went to the U of M. They had a small advertising program there. I worked at the Minnesota Daily, which was probably the best education I had, working with small budgets, unruly clients, and just making the stuff up from scratch yourself. So that was a really good education.
So were you going to go into journalism, or did you know advertising right away?
It was through the School of Journalism.
Okay.
The advertising program was back at that time. I was on an advertising track.
I assume you get done with college and start out at an agency, or how does that work?
Yeah, I actually had an offer from an agency going into my senior year, so I went pro.
Okay.
I left college, went pro, and after that point, everything was on your portfolio. It's like, here's how I think, here's the work I'm capable of. So a degree didn't matter as much on the creative aspect of things.
Got it. So you came out, you worked at an agency?
I worked at a few agencies in Minneapolis.
Okay.
Some big ones, some small ones, some startups. And then I was working at one place, had a chance to go on an awesome trip, and they weren't going to give me the time off, so I made one of the smarter decisions I've made in my life.
Got a fortuitous decision. So tell me about the trip.
It was, I had some friends who were planning a trip to Everest Base Camp in 1999. So this was right after Into Thin Air came out.
Awesome.
And we weren't going to climb the mountain, but we were going to hike to base camp. And they said, there's only one friend we know that would probably want to do this, and it's you. So I signed up and went to ask my employer for some time off.
Yeah.
They said, nope, we can't let you go for a month. I said, I'll take my vacation time unemployed.
Sure. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'll take my vacation time unpaid even. It means that much to me.
Mm-hmm.
And they still said no. Said, you've got a lot of thinking to do. Went home that night and started buying my tickets.
Bought your ticket. Was it hard? At the time, were you like, well, I'm kind of on a trajectory or a path with this agency, and if I quit now or if I leave, or did you feel like you were giving a lot up, or what was your thought process?
I didn't think so, because I think the end result would be great. I'd go on this trip, come back, be able to find a freelance until I could find a real job.
Got it.
And but I wasn't worried. There's a lot of great agencies in town. I have a pretty good name with them.
Yeah.
And so I thought I would be able to do the trip, come back, and start up again.
So I'm kind of geek out about the trip because I attempted to climb Mount Rainier a few years ago, and I say attempted that I got most of the way up through the toughest part, but it ended up coming back down. And I'd like to claim that it was the snow that sent me back down, which it did send the rest of the group back down. But prior to then, because we're all roped in when we do it. So we have a group of 6 or 8 people roped in. So it wasn't a matter of being able to complete it, but you had to be at the same pace.
Yes.
Right? And so when you're climbing vertically for about an hour and 10 minutes, if you're not climbing vertically as fast as the rest of the people, then pretty soon they just have to send you back. So, but I really love the idea for the moment of being part of that community? You know what I mean? I wasn't a cool climber, but I got to be a cool climber for like 3 days where I could be like, yes, I'm one of the cool guys, right? So what was it like when you did the base camp tour?
It was pretty amazing because we left Minneapolis and landed in Dubai, which back then was a lot less built up than it is now. You had a few kind of really funky, architecturally cool buildings on one side of the river, but nothing like it is now. And we thought we were going to be there for 24 hours. We weren't able to get an exit visa to leave the airport, so we thought we were going to be stuck at the airport for 24 hours. We get there, go through customs, and the guy says, yeah, I can sponsor you. You know, someone in the government or here can sponsor you for 24 hours. So we left the cold of Minnesota, and we rented this guy's boat, and he's touring us up and down the river in the Middle East.
Wow.
Like, oh yeah, this is a lot better than staying at the airport.
Right. That's cool.
And then you land in Kathmandu, which...
How far is it from Dubai to Kathmandu?
Oh man, I want to say that's probably about 8 hours.
Okay, so it's another long.
Yeah, another long flight. And just, Kathmandu, that was where Indiana Jones went. That was where, all these explorers went. Whenever they talked about someplace that was exotic and far away, it was always, Kathmandu.
Right.
Even Bob Seger, right?
Yeah, right. That's what I think about, is Bob Seger, right? Yeah. But isn't like the airport, like you're in the mountain, like it's not a big landing or takeoff area, right?
Further up, when we were coming back from our hike, there's a very small airport. But you do have to, even in Kathmandu, you have to navigate over the mountains to come in and drop down pretty quick.
Got it.
And it was, in 99, especially for some Midwestern kid, Kathmandu was just amazing. It was probably the first place in the world that I traveled to where it was obvious I wasn't from there.
Sure.
And everything was so different. And just navigating that and being able to do it, finding a place to stay, going out to eat, walking the streets, finding your way back,
right,
was all very in your face.
And I assume did you have a guy? Did you have somebody that knew the language, or were you just kind of working around?
No, fortunately, we learned a little bit of Nepalese, to be polite. None of us had mastered it, but a lot of people there spoke English. We were very lucky for that.
Oh, all right. So how long from where you are on the hike does it take to get to Everest Base Camp?
We took a bus from Kathmandu to where the road ends in Jiri, this little village, and started hiking from there. And it was about 2 weeks.
2 weeks hike. And you're probably starting at, 10 or 12 or 14,000 feet? How high up is it when you start your hike?
I'm not sure, but I do remember about 10 minutes into that first day, we were already going, oh my God, what have we gotten ourselves into? This is going to be horrible. We have 2 weeks of this. And you look into the distance and you can see where you're headed. And it's just these majestic peaks disappearing into the clouds. And you're like, oh no.
Wow. That's cool. So when you get to base camp, you hang out there for a little while. I've often thought or heard that you may not be received well because maybe people that are climbing Everest are thinking you might bring disease in to the camp. Was there any of that, or did you feel welcome?
We were there ahead of the climbing season.
Oh, you were? Okay.
Yeah. So when we were on our way down, some of the first yak trains with supplies were coming up for those parties.
Okay, got it. So you weren't there while people were attempting to summit?
No. We pretty much had the whole place to ourselves, which was really stunning. It was gorgeous, and the people were really proud of the mountain.
Really? Tell me about that.
But there was one stop along the trail. I was waiting for my friends to catch up, and they have these little rock shelves where Sherpas, people carrying supplies, whoever, and they usually have these big kind of wicker conical baskets that they carry on a head strap, where they can just lean against it and kind of take the load off without having to put it on the ground and pick it up. And I was sitting there resting, and this kid carrying one of those baskets comes and sits down next to me, and we start talking. And he knew some English, a lot more than I knew Nepalese, and was wondering where I was from. I said the United States, Minnesota, kind of in the middle, near the top. And, Prince,
Did he know Prince?
He did not. But he was wondering, like, why? He was like, so why are you here? And I said, oh, we want to see Sagarmatha, the mountain. And he puffs up his chest and he's like, yes, our mountain.
Our mountain.
And it's like, yeah, if you want to see the mountain, you have to come there.
That's cool. So now you find your way back from the Everest Base Camp trip. You figure out you're going to freelance for a little bit until you maybe hook your next full-time job, right?
Yeah.
And so how'd that go?
I was very lucky. I got back. I had sent some postcards, too, that I had made to creative directors around town that
Smart.
I asked a friend to send out every week. This is before the internet and everything.
Right.
Send out one card a week, and I said, hey, this is where we probably are right now.
Awesome.
At this altitude in this village, whatever. And so when I got back, it was great going on some interviews and seeing people had collected them, had them up on their walls. So I was expecting, I had some interviews lined up, was ready to go, and then some agencies said, hey, we need someone for a couple weeks. Can you come in? Sure. And then another one did, and another one did, and it just kind of became its own thing.
So when you come back, having had this trip that you did, as the freelance stuff started happening, were you thinking to yourself, all right, this is something maybe I want to keep doing more trips? Is that where your mind went?
Oh, yeah. And that was going to be a goal whether or not I was freelance or working someplace.
Okay.
I knew the last place I'd worked at wasn't going to let me go do a big trip like this. That was something that if I was ever to work at a place again, I would make sure that was kind of part of the deal.
That was part of the deal.
Yeah.
So you continue on in the freelance space. And so it seems like you were pretty steadily had a job. I mean, were you ever nervous, or did it ever dry up for a period of time where you're like, geez, I think I might have to go back to W-2 regular full-time employment with somebody?
Oh, yeah. After 20 years, that fear hasn't gone away. It's diminished, but it's still there.
It's still there.
And yeah, I'm like, oh my God, what if this is the last project anyone ever gives me? And they find out I've just been making this stuff up all along.
So for the last 20 years, you've been freelance?
Yes.
The whole time. All right. Well, so tell me, in the advertising space, how has that evolved over the last 20 or 30 years?
There's a lot more people doing it.
Okay.
And I was lucky enough to, I've enjoyed it so much, I would ask myself, why didn't I do this sooner? And the answer is always because you didn't know enough about the industry, about marketing. And so I'm very glad for the experience I got working for big agencies, little agencies, and the people I did. I learned a lot, mostly what to do, sometimes not what to do. And nowadays, I think a lot of people come out of school and immediately want to freelance. And they're not sure how agencies work, how the structures work. They haven't learned from people who have done it before. And some of them are super successful because they're incredibly talented and can do that. So I think overall, a lot more people are doing it too. Technology has allowed people to be more mobile, more flexible, to accomplish a lot more without other companies. You don't have to go send type out to be set somewhere. Right. A lot of people can do photography, or there's more stock houses to get stuff from.
Would you say that a good copywriter or somebody in advertising, are they compensated the same way they used to be, or has that been pressed down because people are pulling nuggets from the internet, or shopping jobs out on the internet? Sure. I've even seen, right?
That's very true. I think it's still a matter of you get what you pay for most of the time. I can do some dentistry if you want, but very cheaply, but you're probably not going to like the results. So yeah, it's like any other industry. You get what you pay for a lot. And I think a lot of the people who are charging more deliver, and they'd better deliver a quality product, because there's lots of other people out there who can jump in. So
I was thinking about, I've got a cousin of mine who's in the advertising space, and seems like that he's kind of chasing this iconic advertisement, right? To at some point have this thing that maybe even a generation would remember what that was. Is that a common thread for people that are in your space?
I think everyone wants to. Everyone wants to. That's why there's a lot of award shows, too. And everyone wants to win those awards. Everyone wants to, I guess, live on like that. Have their work kind of live on, have people say it. We've all seen it with like Just Do It, how that took on a life of its own.
Right.
And I mean, that's something that still to this day, everyone knows what it is.
Right.
And everything around it just created this whole, it went beyond advertising and became part of culture. And I think that's what people in advertising would love to have happen.
Well, I've got two questions for that. One, do you know something's good before it goes live, or is it? I think of movie stars who are doing a movie, and I mean, do they know that this is going to be a good movie beforehand, or does it take the feedback, right? Like in your space, do you have any? Is there something that you're like, I don't know, and then the feedback you get is like, oh my gosh, people really like that.
Yeah, that happens in our industry quite a bit, where I think you know when something is going to be good. Whether it produces results, whether it's accepted by people out there, that's the big thing. I mean, you really need that sense of empathy to create something that you think they think will be good, not just what you think is good.
So here's the other question I had, because I got no debate about this, which was the Dilly Dilly thing. Yeah. That had just taken off, right? And now you got like NFL players calling audibles, saying dilly dilly in the middle of it,
sure.
That kind of thing, just for fun. And in the ad space, I assume you're like, that guy's genius, that he figured that out and somehow that it stuck. And my question was, well, I'm not going to drink any more Bud Light. Like, that's cool, right? But
the product has got to...
Yeah, but it doesn't do anything for me, right? So what's the goal of advert? I mean, is it different for you? Do you feel differently if you feel like it is smart?
Yeah, and that's the end result. It has to result in sales or, just a positive feeling about a brand or something that will lead to. There's no doubt that it's commerce is going to be the bottom line, but humor, emotion, those are all things that have to be put into it. Mm-hmm. I don't know how they came up with Dilly Dilly. The first time I saw it, I pictured the meeting room. They went, "Oh, what's the dumbest thing we could get people to say?" Dilly Dilly. Yeah, okay. And they did it, and it took off. And I'm like, it's been hugely successful. I don't like it personally. I don't drink the beer either. But you're absolutely right. I've been with my family out at watching a game somewhere, and an ad will come on TV that I absolutely hate, and they'll be laughing and, oh, did you write this? Because it's really fun. No! Stop liking bad ads.
Right. Well, and the other thing, is there ageism in advertising? I mean, I know some people in the ad space, and I think they feel like, geez, if I haven't done something dramatically good by the time I'm 40, that I'm going to be considered over the hill and I'll be replaced by somebody who's younger. I mean, do you agree that there's ageism in the ad space?
I think there definitely is. It seems to be more and more of a young person's industry. Mm-hmm. And not that as you get older, you necessarily get kicked out, or you reach a certain age and, well, you didn't achieve this level. So I know some really great creatives who wanted to reach state creatives. Mm-hmm. They never wanted the big titles or anything, so they keep doing great work, but they're not making a huge splash.
It's something that sticks in my brain is the idea of, for some reason, when I'm thinking of the creatives in advertising, mm-hmm. I'm thinking of like a musician who would write a song, right? And I don't know why it is that, or if there is any parallel to that, all of these bands and musicians, the vast majority of them are like 22, right?
Right.
When they're having all this success. And do you think people lose their creativity as they get older, or is it just different? It manifests in a different way, I guess.
I think so. And I think you, especially in advertising or any like music, whatever, you have to keep evolving and changing, and a way of thinking, a way of creating that you did in the past may not work in like a new form of media or with a new group of people. So I think you can, you just, like any industry, you have to keep evolving, keep changing, keep adapting. Otherwise you do become a dinosaur.
And how do you fight getting into maybe a rut, if you will, or whatever, I just think a lot of professions, once you've figured something out, right? The one time or whenever it was that you felt like at this moment in time, I have everything perfectly figured out. How do you program yourself to release it and understanding that, you know what, next year, that's old news?
Because the next project you get on is like, oh, that's not going to work here.
Got it.
So yeah, like I've said before, it's that variety. Every assignment requires you to put yourself in a different person's shoes, think a different way. And if you stop doing that and make it about yourself, then you get in those ruts.
So now if I'm sitting home with my wife and a commercial comes on TV, we're either pausing the DVR or we're streaming one of the apps out there, and or even if it's radio, right, where all of your music streaming, you're paying all these monthly fees just to make sure you don't have any ads whatsoever.
Yeah.
Is that a threat to an advertising space, or it just changes where the advertising space goes?
It's going to change where it goes. I don't think you're ever going to eliminate advertising. It's always existed in some form or another. From the first caveman to go, yo,
right,
check out this sweet deer I caught. Right. You want to hang with me. People have always sought ways to promote things, to advertise them, and it's always evolved. As technology and society have changed, we've always found new ways to promote, to sell, to advertise.
So where's the bulk of the advertising going now, and where do you see it going?
I can't speak to any specific percentages, but a lot of it seems to be shifting, even in with my clients and people I'm working with, into social media as opposed to traditional broadcast. A lot of TV is still being done, but you also have, this can also be repurposed as a YouTube video or an online ad or someplace here or there. There's a lot more outlets.
What's your feeling about this idea of maybe on the internet now where advertising might be tracking where people are clicking? You know what I mean?
They totally are.
Right. Well, I mean, they are, but what's your thoughts on it? In other words, if I go look up a new pair of shoes, the next month that I'm on the internet, that pair of shoes pops up in an advertisement on the side.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Has it ever happened to you where you go check out
all the time,
or hiking shoes or whatever, and then you go to a totally different website and there's an ad for?
Yeah, there's the ad for it. Is that a good thing? It kind of creeps me out a little bit. So
it does, and some companies seek to avoid that.
Okay.
Because they want to avoid that creep factor. Others embrace it because they see it as a way to get in front of people. And in the beginning, it felt like a free-for-all, didn't it? When Facebook, I can post things, share things with anybody, do this, and here's Instagram, and I can put up these people posting random videos from around the world. It felt like a fun Wild West. Kind of anything went. And then people found a way to monetize it. Where they can, now we can track this and that. If they're doing it just to, people have been trying to gather marketing data forever. The Nielsen ratings. You'd be a Nielsen household and write down what TV shows you watched. But now so much of it seems hidden and involuntary that, it does get creepy. It gets invasive, and with all these smart devices in the home, that's just going to increase even more. Well,
and I feel like, though, part of the issue from an advertising space that any business that's paying you for the advertising is trying to see the results, right? And it seems like it's much more easier to track from an internet standpoint, right? That you could now come back and say, well, shoot, you got 10,000 clicks last month. You know what I mean? Maybe not necessarily resulting in sales, but certainly you can monitor the traffic so much more closely, right?
Yeah, definitely. But there's ways to fake that too with, fake Twitter accounts, fake followers. You can buy followers, you can buy hits, things like that. So that
you can buy hits?
Yeah.
Dang.
Some guy in a room just hitting.
You can pay somebody just to
that's not how they do it. It's all
not an advertising. Well, you know what I mean. It seems black market
yes.
kind of, right?
Yeah.
Got it.
So those numbers can be distorted.
Right. So I want to go back a little bit now to where you focus on having travel be part of your space, right? And that it's important to you every year. In a given year, what does kind of your work and play schedule kind of look like for you?
That really varies year to year, even month to month. But you learn to get it while the getting's good. And then I've always had a good mind that if there's a slow period, take advantage of it. Mm-hmm. Go somewhere, do something, work on a project that you've been wanting to, and then come back to work. Mm-hmm. So, in strictly time, it's really hard to say, because even if you're not traveling, there may be a week when you don't have a project. Mm-hmm. So that's a great time to network, write any screenplays or novels you have going on, do something, do writing just for you, do some creating just for you, go biking, do whatever whatever you like. I know a lot of people who are freelancers, and if they are finishing up a project and don't have one lined up, they get really nervous. Mm-hmm. And I've always liked to take glad for a day or two in between projects to just kind of reset, recover, because sometimes you end up working tons of hours in a very short period, because that's when the work comes in. Mm-hmm. So you learn to take advantage of those lulls, whether it's traveling or doing something that you're just also really passionate about.
Well, so I've done another podcast with somebody where we were talking about, in this particular case, she was trying to make a decision on what her next job was going to be. Mm-hmm. And she had long had a decision tree based on her values. And every year she would revamp her decision tree kind of what's the most important stuff to me. And so when she was going through the jobs that she was looking at, I think number 8 on her value list was how much money she made. Mm-hmm. Right. And there was all these other things. And she happened to be an outdoors person. So being able to camp for a month out of the year, things like that were higher on her list.
Yeah.
Do you have a kind of a priority or a value tree for yourself? Like, what are the top items for you that are important? I'm getting the sense from you that I think the cool thing about it is there's this work life and there's this non-work life, and they just all kind of melding together in a sense for you.
It feels that way. I love what I do. Mm-hmm. I think I'm fairly good at it. I know there's a lot of people who are even better, and I always try to strive for that level. I can always get better. Mm-hmm. But I like it because you're always learning. You have to know about new industries, new companies, find a way to talk to different groups of people that aren't you. Mm-hmm. Keep up on the latest technology, current events, pop culture, music, technology trends. All this stuff kind of are thrown together, and you have to know and be open to evolving your knowledge in those areas. Mm-hmm.
But would you have somebody gives you a project and says, I'm going to need you every day for the next 12 months. Would you say, that doesn't fit into my personal weave that I've got going along with work?
That would be a tough one. I would never say never to going back to a full-time
like an agency.
Agency, yeah. I would never say never, but there would have to be certain things that I would get in return for that.
Got it.
And one of them would be ample time off to travel. That's just a priority, and I'll take my Subaru instead of a BMW if I get to go, see New Zealand for a month.
Got it.
I'll always be glad for a choice like that.
You've had base camp. Have there been other trips then? I'm sure a bunch of them. What are some of the highlights that you've had?
Got to climb Kilimanjaro.
Awesome.
And do a safari on the Serengeti, which was outstanding.
You weren't kidnapped or anything?
No,
right?
No. It's a pretty quick climb. You go out, you gain a lot of altitude really quick. It's a hike. It's an uphill hike. No technical climbing. Yeah,
and I think the only way you wouldn't make it is altitude sickness, right?
Yeah, altitude sickness, or it's just, you didn't train properly.
So it sounds like on base camp, you maybe didn't train. Is that right? Or not that much?
Not as much. I mean, that was 1999, so I could do it on a bag of Doritos,
Right.
That's all I need.
So Kilimanjaro, did you take it serious and say, all right, I've got to, run a half marathon or something before I go?
A bit more so. And I knew what high altitude could do to you, and I think how to train for it, even here in Minnesota. I would go on hikes, like find hilly hikes, and I would just put like half a straw in my mouth and breathe through that.
And did it work?
I made it up. I did get altitude sickness the second day as we were coming in. I just headache, nausea, didn't want to eat, which for me is like a really bad sign if I'm not hungry. And so they're like, okay, we'll check on you in the night. But if you're not better by morning, we'll probably have to bring you down to a lower altitude. And that was a real surprising moment because you realize that you aren't like on Rainier. You realize you aren't guaranteed to accomplish this, no matter how hard you try, how hard you train. Something could come up and it's not going to happen. You're not guaranteed it.
Yeah. To me, it's part of the cool thing of the mountain is that this idea that you don't conquer it. It's just like letting you go. You've been fortunate enough to have 20 years of freelance. Fortunate enough, it sounds like, to be very intentional of where do I want my workspace to be? What are other travel things or other things that are really important to me? Do you feel like you've had, how old are you now? 50. Did you have a midlife crisis? Are you? Can you? Does it hit everybody? Or do you kind of go,
no.
Wait a second, I haven't missed anything. I'm feeling good.
No, I don't think I have, which is great because that means I'm going to live to 100 at least. Maybe I'll have it when I'm 60 or something. I don't know. Right.
But you just haven't woke up and had this, geez, it's passing me by kind of feeling, right?
I'm not going to deny that there's always those feelings. Like, oh, I could have done more. I could have done this. I should have gone here. I should have. But, you don't let that dominate your thoughts. I think every single person has had those.
Do you write out goals? Do you have things thought out well in advance? I mean, was there here's what I want to do by the time I'm 40 or 45 or 50? Or do you do that stuff at all?
No, I don't think I ever really have. It's hard to, people have like a bucket list, they say. And a lot of my travels have just been, I never would have thought to go there, but there's an opportunity that presented itself. And so I want to take advantage of it. Some people say you should live every day as if it's your last. And that just gets to be impossible. You can't live that way. You need to mow the lawn. You need to buy food. You need to do some way to get money to do these things.
Right.
So it's, you can't do that. I think it needs to become part, those goals need to become part of your life.
Explain that a little bit more.
Well, like I said, part of your everyday life, and live a little bit of them every day. And it's amazing what you'll find. That first stamp in the passport I ever got was a buddy and I went to England and Scotland. And that like blew me away. It was because just walking around on the street, it was, it looked kind of like streets here, but it wasn't. Food kind of tasted, fish and chips. Well, I've had fish and chips before, but oh my God, they're in England. And seeing these people and places and those little differences that excited me. Right. And when I came back home, I realized that part of that came back with me. I was like, I've never noticed that sign there before, or look at this cool building. And if you can do that every day, even when you're at home, and just find those little mysteries and amazements, that's kind of living an adventure every day.
Well, I read a book not too long ago about a guy who rode his bike from Portland, Oregon, down to the southern tip of South America. Right?
That's amazing.
And a road bike, right? And his idea was, when you keep doing the same thing every day, pretty soon your brain doesn't have to be on high alert. You know what I mean? That you're just doing it, and all of a sudden a year went by, and things, it's just, that
Oh, it took him a year.
Yeah, but for him, like the thing is what he learned was if I keep doing new and different things, then my brain has to be active because we're processing new and different things, and that you're fully absorbing the present moment because it's new to you versus keep doing the same things. Yeah, totally.
And you probably noticed this too. It's always amazing when you're somewhere and you're able to go for an extended period of time. That switch your mind makes wherever you are, and it's like, oh, this trip is like the new life. This is the way things are now. And like, okay, this is what I'm wearing. Carry everything on my back, going here, doing this, and you just kind of adapt yourself to that vacation or travel lifestyle for a while. And I always love when that moment occurs where it's, oh, this is the new normal.
Is there anything for you that is an off the table? Whether it's, and I'm thinking more career-wise, probably of I've created this lifestyle for myself. This is what's important to me. This is what I value. If you're asking me to do X, can't do it.
Full nudity. It's just uncalled for in an ad agency.
I think the older you get, you're probably secure in that one.
I think I'm pretty safe.
Yeah.
I got a great body for podcasts.
Right. Perfect. Is there anything at all that you're like, I've just decided this isn't a thing for me, that I just kind of feel like, being smart enough not to get yourself into a situation that you would regret, or a situation where you're like, God, I'm going to be bummed out, or I'm going to be stressed out, or I'm going to be whatever, that I feel like I want to have enough control to not do those things.
Sure. There's been a number of projects that were like that. It's like, this is going to be a huge chunk of your time. It's not going to be creatively fulfilling. And it's going to be a reduced rate, and over an extended period of time. And, you talk to other people who've worked at some of these places, and like, yeah, it's just not worth the trade-off, not worth the frustration and trade-off.
Do you have are you in a fortunate enough spot to basically look at it and say, if I'm not creatively challenged, I'm not excited about doing a project? Or is there, kind of like you were talking about before, a little bit of the, hey, there's real world, I gotta, pay the bills a little bit, and,
Oh, I'm the world's worst prima donna. I maybe I should be. I could double my rates or something. But right. No, and those kind of projects I spoke about just before this, yeah, those are very rare.
Okay.
It doesn't need to be a huge budget. I love the challenge of coming up with smarter advertising rather than just more expensive. And you can always learn something from this project. Sometimes it may be what not to do, but you come out of it smarter. You usually meet some really cool people involved in the process, and you can still, even though it seems a slog, you can guide that towards success.
So you're 50 now. You project this out moving forward. Are you somebody that's like, this doesn't even feel like work to me, I'm just going to keep doing it forever? Or do you have a, boy, speaking of all my trips, I want to be on a beach in Fiji or something by the time I'm 50. I mean, have you mapped that stuff out?
Well, that, I would have been happy with that when I was 20. Beach in Fiji.
Right.
Not really. I'm pretty good as far as saving and planning towards the future. I have, I live pretty simply, and I know what my passions are. So I try to direct and we all have limited time and money. I try to direct mine towards those passions.
And is your, and just to open up a little bit with that, what are kind of your top passions? I'm gathering mountain climbing. What else is on the radar for you?
Well, definitely travel.
Travel, yep.
I love food. I love cooking. And people have asked, why don't you open a restaurant or a food truck? And I'm very afraid about monetizing something I love doing. And then it becomes a business and work and a chore, as opposed to something I do for my own enjoyment or to share with friends. But yeah, I'd love to explore that and do a little bit more. So
do you imagine how that transition happens? And again, I know there's no real definitive time in a given year of on primary work and off on other stuff. But just kind of see that maybe slowly just pulling back a little bit from maybe work time and playtime a little bit?
Maybe. It's been a really good balance. Mm-hmm. And if I'm working on things that I really enjoy and I love the projects I'm currently working on.
Yeah.
Because they're forcing you to learn, and you come up with those ideas when you're done, and you're kind of got like that sweat.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh my God, this is kind of cool. I like this. Yeah. So I want to keep doing that for as long as I can, as long as I have that, as long as I can maintain that balance.
Yeah.
But I never know. I don't think I'd know when I was retired. People may just stop giving me projects. I was like, oh, I retired 5 years ago. Didn't even know
technically, I mean, yeah, you won't probably just, I mean, by nature of being freelance, you're not fired, right? You're just not rehired at some point. Got it. What would you describe, I guess, from a personal and maybe professional sense, how would you define, if you went forward the next 10, 15 years, what would be success for you?
I guess it would be to keep traveling. I want to get back on some more mountains. And it's been a number of years since then. There was a small health issue that kind of took me off training for about a year. And work came and just some general laziness on my behalf. Mm-hmm. So I would love to devote more time to getting back up another one. Like, if you want to go back to Rainier, we could set that as a...
that I would love it because I haven't been to the top. Now, I will say, full disclosure, there was a point in time when I climbed that, because the first night you camp out at 10,000 feet, where I thought, if I fall off, this would be the dumbest thing I've ever done.
You mean fall off the mountain?
Fall off the mountain, right? And I remember when I did my training, I was thinking, and I don't know why it just dawned on me as they take a bunch of complete rookies and we're doing our remedial mountain climbing training, mm-hmm. right? And I said to the guide, so you're going to strap yourself to 4 of us who've never climbed a mountain in our lives.
Oh, that's
right?
why he gets the big bucks.
That's why he gets the big bucks. And I just thought that was insane. And that was the only thing that made me feel a little better, because that guy would have to be suicidal if it wasn't somewhat safe, But yes, I'd love to be at the top of Rainier someday.
All right. Well, we got a sequel then for this podcast.
Perfect. Well, I think that's all we have time for today. I appreciate you coming in, Scott, and giving us some insight. I love the whole story of your work-life balance, and I just think you're doing some awesome stuff. It's great.
Oh, well, likewise, too, and thanks for having me in.
Today's guest was Scott Jorgensen, an advertising copywriter / creative director who, through a mix of freelance work and far-off travels, has achieved a meaningful work-life balance. To learn more about Scott and the work he does, you can reach him at basecampscott.com. On our next episode, we'll hear from JT Starzecki, Chief Marketing Officer for a mining and fertilizer company called Sirius Minerals. If you've ever wanted to learn the ways of doing business in China, you might want to listen to what he has to say.
And so when you go over there, things are very formal, they're very structured, and most importantly, they're very hierarchical. And so even whose hand you shake first, or if you're sitting down for a meal and you want to toast, right? You have to know the pecking order, if you will, and you have to follow that to a T.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Ascent Podcast, a show about inspiring people who explain their path to achievement. I'm your host, Joe Burgess, wealth advisor and founding partner of Moxie Wealth Management. You can learn more about me and my firm at moxiewealthmanagement.com. That's MOXIE wealthmanagement.com. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.